So some examples of knowing something would be, could you use a Pythagorean theorem to make a perpendicular wall, something perpendicular to the ground, or walls perpendicular to each other? Can you use it to build? Can you use knowledge about physics to make a perpendicular wall? Could you use knowledge about diagonals, rectangles, parallelograms to make sure you have a box with 90-degree angles that's a rectangle instead of something else? Could you find a way in the woods to break a stick that you can't break with your bare hands, or maybe you couldn't break by hitting the ground? Like, what is a way you could do to use that? How does circular motion apply to weightlifting? What about torque? How does physics apply to your daily action? You know, what about, supposedly you're gonna learn something about pressure in physics and chemistry. Okay, do you really know it? How does that relate to your body and your blood flow and everything? Standing up, moving around, how does it relate to the pumping of your heart? How does physical activity relate to blood flow and lymph flow? Think about forces and pressures, things like that. Or how does some of what you learn in literature relate to what you've learned in history, which would relate to the way things are in society nowadays? How does what you learn in history relate to the way society is, and what works and what doesn't, and where we might go to improve things? So there are some examples of practical uses of some knowledge. Do others on your own. There's all sorts of concepts in school. You only have so much time, do only so many, but try to find a practical use for things you are learning. Make sure, make sure you know where an idea comes from in the world, and from a teacher or from a book is not a logical source. That's just existential or psychological. Where it comes from means logical. You got to know on your own in the real world. So think about some other ideas. Climbing trees, making a house, making a fort, something with computers, writing, literature, friendship, society. Think about how these things really come into play, so what you've got is more knowledge rather than useless, memorized, empty words.